His time has expired. I call Paul Goldsmith.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the mixed ownership model bill. Mr. Speaker, ownership matters, and if any members need convincing, they should look at TV's 3 report on the Port of Tauranga last evening, where the company's productivity and progress was noted. And the comments of David Honey, an employee of 18 years, were powerful. He said, like 90% of the workers at the Port of Tauranga, have shares in the company. And he said, working in the place that you're a part owner of just makes you want to make sure that it works both for you and for everyone else around. Ownership matters, and people's behaviour changes when they have a stake in their company. And one of the many good results of this bill, it seems to me, is that the employees of Mighty River Power and the other energy companies will at last have the chance, an opportunity to buy shares directly in the company that they work for. And I'm sure that will go a long way to improving the productivity of this country. Mr. Speaker, this is a very significant piece of legislation and part of National's plan to deliver a stronger, enduring economic growth. The issue was front and centre at all the debates during the campaign last year. It was signalled, it was well explained, and it was primarily as a key part of the government's plan to carry on investing in this country, investing in modern schools, hospitals, priority public infrastructure, without exposing the economy to so much international debt. And what happened? The people of New Zealand turned out and returned this national government with the highest popular vote in many decades. And most people saw through the overblown rhetoric of selling off our assets, flogging off our assets, and understood that the government will continue to own 51% of these assets, and it will prevent any other shareholder having more than 10%. So no amount of fear-mongering can overwhelm that reality, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, other speakers have touched on many of the good arguments in support of this legislation. I want to touch on 3. First is that this bill will reduce our requirements for extra international debt. There's so much that we want to invest on in this country. Indeed, this government expects to spend more than $20 billion buying new assets over the next 4 years. But there is a limit to our resources. Mixed ownership will free up $5 to $7 billion to invest in the Future Investment Fund in priority areas such as schools and hospitals. And meantime, each of these companies will need substantial. Many of these companies, these 4 companies that we're talking about, will need substantial capital investments over the next few years. And in basic terms, the Crown now will need to only invest 51% of that new capital rather than the 100% that they do at the moment. And again, the private sector now can carry some of that burden and reduce the need for the state to be borrowing as much. The alternative is a lot more debt that would have to borrow on fragile and volatile international markets, and anybody who hasn't been watching the news recently will see the dangers of borrowing more money at a time like this. We may be able to raise that money today, but who knows what it's going to be like in the future. The government's approach is the most prudent in these dangerous times. We've heard again, I wrote it, thank you. We've heard again that from the other side, many... I'm not reading, I'm just referring to it. Thank you very much, sir. We've heard again other misplaced arguments about the dividend stream being higher than the borrowed costs. This line of reasoning misses the point entirely. It ignores the all-important element of risk. Most people don't follow that logic in their own lives. Most people don't borrow $100,000 on their mortgage in order to buy shares because they know that there is more risks in shares. And they don't do that because they correctly factor in the amount of risk. Another benefit from this bill is that it will deepen New Zealand capital markets, broaden the pool of investment for New Zealand investors. And New Zealand savers, and this is not just the 1%, it's the hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders who invest in KiwiSaver and many other investments have the opportunity now to have a stake in these companies, and that's a good thing, Mr. Speaker. Finally, I just wanted to... the primary benefit, it seems to me, out of this mixed ownership model is that it will bring the disciplines of the private sector into ownership into these companies. The market test generated by the stock market and the signal provided by the share price as to what is happening to the value of the company and its return on capital is more likely to be transparent and accurate than any system in place to monitor an entirely state-owned enterprise. And I have no doubt that the disciplines imposed by the public trading floor will benefit these companies. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, mixed ownership is a smart and a sensible policy that will strengthen the New Zealand economy, and I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Members, this debate has concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote's been called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National,
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes opposed.
Green Party,
10 votes opposed.
New Zealand First,
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party,
3 votes opposed.
Mana,
1 vote opposed.
Act New Zealand,
1 in favour.
United Future,
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 60. The motion is agreed to.
Mixed Ownership Model Bill, first reading.
The question is, order now, these are taken in silence. The question is that the Mixed Ownership Model Bill be considered by the Finance and Expenditure Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The Honourable Tony Roll.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Mixed Ownership Model Bill be reported back to the House on or before 16 July 2012.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government order.